behalf of the team at the Career Transition Workshop, we often refer to it as the Frisco Career Transition Workshop, I'd like to welcome you to our first segment. What we are proposing to do is weekly on Tuesdays, we will have different segments of this workshop that are normally given in a one full day workshop when we're meeting in person. So if you want to see what's coming up, I recommend that you check careerdfw.org, or you can check the website at stonebriar.org. We are hosted and sponsored by Stonebriar Community Church in Frisco, Texas, and we are very, very humbled and proud of how they have supported us with venues and amenities when we were able to meet physically, and hopefully we will be back doing that soon. We present this workshop about 3 times a year, usually in January, May, and in September. But because of the COVID-19 issue, we've broken it up, like I said, into several live sessions over Zoom, and we are streaming live on Facebook as well. If you go to the Career DFW site on Facebook, you'll see us live streaming there. And when this session is over, the recorded session, and we are recording, will be loaded on YouTube under the channel Career USA. And with us today are our team headed by Rex Sowett. We also have Gail Houston, our presenter. We have Foster Williams, who is the manager, creator of the Career Search Network. And we also have Jeff Morris, who is the creator and producer of careerdfw.org. And Jeff does a marvelous job, as does Foster, on their websites with just loads of information and tools to help people in job transition and in seeking new employment. And that is the case for too many people these days, unfortunately. So what we are going to do is our agenda for today will look something like this. First of all, I want you to note again that this event is being recorded and is currently live on Facebook, and the recording of this session and future sessions will also be on Facebook and YouTube. Again, on Facebook, it's Career DFW. On YouTube, the channel is Career USA, which is the expanded version of Career DFW. So that'll be available to, if you want to recommend it for others to view in the future. My controls are a little squirrely, I apologize. Please also be aware that if you are participating on this call in Zoom, and if you post a comment in the chat box or have your microphone or camera on, those images will be recorded, and you're giving consent for your comments, name, and picture to appear on the recorded version. We just want to make sure everybody's clear about that. Okay, and so today's agenda will be, we have a message of encouragement by the pastor of Care Ministries at Stonebriar Community Church, Steve Fisher, who has been our, I hesitate to use this word, but he's been our godfather, if you will, in supporting Frisco Connect and the Career Transition Workshop at Stonebriar Community Church. And then we'll have our presentation by Gail Houston. And then after Gail's presentation, we will open it up for a Q&A with our expert panel. Foster and Jeff and Rex and Gail will be on that panel. And as we go through this presentation with Gail, what I would ask you to do is bring your cursor down to the bottom of your screen so that the toolbar pops up, and there is a place on there for chat. Excuse me. And you can type your questions in the chat, and we will be monitoring those during the presentation. Now, please, to make it simple, rather than a regular comment, if you're asking a question, the first thing I would ask you to type is a question mark so we know it's a question for the panel, and then please type the text of your question. Also, if you're typing comments on Facebook, I would ask that you do the same thing in your comments if you are asking a question. So we're going to go ahead and go to the message of encouragement. This was pre-recorded by Steve Fisher. He is helping a lot of people that have a lot of great needs right now. And so we had him do this ahead of time so that we would be able to present it to you on this session. Okay, I missed that slide, but I've also explained it.
Hi, my name is Pastor Steve Fisher, and I'm the Care Ministries pastor for Stonebriar Community Church in Frisco, Texas. On behalf of our senior pastor, Dr. Chuck Swindoll, we are grateful to continue our association with the Career Transition Workshop. Stonebriar has had a long association with Rex and his team, and we are humbled to continue to support their efforts during these unprecedented times. So first and foremost, Rex, to your team, God bless you all for the work that you're doing. Now, Rex has asked me to say a few words of encouragement before this workshop begins. And to be quite honest with you, that's a pretty easy task for me at most times, to speak encouragement. But I am a little bit more reflectful, and I want to choose my words wisely, for this is truly an unprecedented time. And the last thing I want to do is to come off and trivialize anything or speak words that just are meant to make you feel good. I pray these words, you will draw some meaning that is truly helpful for you in these times. The last several weeks in my role at Stonebriar, I've met with dozens and dozens of people over the Zoom or Teams ministries. And there's a common refrain, goes something like this: I am where I am, and it is what it is. And in those utterings, there's a sense of hopelessness, many times a sense of I have no idea what to do or where to go. And so I pray that through the few moments I have, perhaps you might find a different perspective that will help you move through this into your next appointment, into your next assignment. So I grew up in Wisconsin, lots of farms around Wisconsin, and I worked on those for summer jobs. And I remember a very consistent process that all farmers, or quite frankly even gardeners, go through. It's called the law of the farm. And I'm just going to talk about really the first two pieces of that, and perhaps next time we can visit and I can talk through the rest of it. But the first part of getting the soil ready to plant involves a very violent process, a process that is disruptive, to say the least, and that is the tilling of the soil. I remember taking a hoe and just hammering into hard soil from the cold Wisconsin winters. And it was hard work, and it was very disruptive with rocks and dirt and everything flying around. Looked very chaotic. But it was necessary, wasn't it? For Scripture talks about, and Again, we don't throw seeds on hard ground. They won't take root. And so during this COVID season, many who have been displaced or furloughed from jobs have had an abrupt disruption of their life. And many of the things that they counted on have been broken up in a very quick and sometimes very disruptive and perhaps even violent fashion. You didn't see it coming. You didn't plan for it. You had no idea. But that disruption, that plant, that breaking of the soil, that breaking of the routine creates an opportunity. And that comes next, and that is the planting of the seed. Now, common sense would say you don't plant corn and expect potatoes to grow. What you plant is what you expect to harvest. And so the question I have for all of us is, what type of seeds are you planting right now? Are you developing new skills, meeting new people, perhaps looking at a different life pathway? Are you planting those seeds that will help you? Are you planting seeds that are still perhaps stuck in some bitterness? Planting seeds that are full of fear, perhaps even anger. Seeds that keep you distant from people as opposed to involved with people. For the seeds you plant after the disruption of the soil will dictate what you will harvest when it does come harvest time. And there will be a harvest time. I'm confident of that. Perhaps you are planting seeds that will give you a new perspective on your life. New opportunities to look at, these higher level questions sometimes. What's life about? What am I doing with my life? Where do I want to go? Perhaps these times will even encourage you to look at your faith differently. Perhaps faith wasn't a part of your life at all. And perhaps this is a time where you're asking the question, okay, God, if you're there, what do you got for me? How are you going to help me through this? Perhaps it's a time for some of you who may revisit the faith of your youth, the faith that long ago has not been part of your life. Those are the opportunities. I think that exists now. So in the midst of the fear and in the midst of the concern, in the midst of the uncertainty, and in the midst of the responsibility to begin to look for new work, there's also new opportunity because of this disruption. And the question really is what seeds are you planting? What seeds do you want to take root and grow and ultimately harvest as we go down the road of your life? I don't think many of our day-to-day busyness sometimes allows us to reflect on things like this. And again, I don't want to come across again as dismissing the real concerns: keeping the lights on, keeping the mortgage, keeping a child in school, keeping a college opportunity going. All of those are real. And I am confident concerns that we all have. But in those concerns, there does create an opportunity. And I would encourage you to begin to ask yourself those questions, to ask others those questions, to don't let this season go without an opportunity to look at what you and what your life is planting. So there's a story that I want to tell you, and some of you may have heard it before, but I think it sends a message. So a while back, I'm not sure the price point anymore, the most expensive coffee was a coffee called Kape Lua, and it came from Indonesia. And The reason this coffee was the most expensive was because of a unique harvesting method. You see, there's a cat in Indonesia called a civet cat, like a bobcat, we would say. And this bobcat has taste buds for this particular plant in Indonesia, this particular coffee plant. And so the civet cat will eat the berries, the coffee berries, from this plant. And there's something unique about the digestive enzymes, apparently, of the civet cat, that when they eat the bean, the enzymes that are in within the cat create in these beans the most robust, rich, exquisite, I've never had a cup of this coffee, exquisite bean that makes the most delicious cup of coffee, I'm told, that exists. The unique part is this, is the harvesting of those beans. I'm going to let that sit for a second. See, the civet cat eats the beans. They're brought into the cat's digestive system, and then they're pushed out. And the harvesting method is just what you think it is. People go through the scat of the civet cat, and they pick these beans out. And then they're roasted, and they make the coffee. And so I think the metaphor perhaps is playing out for you. That's what it feels like sometimes. That there's just a big mess. And here's what I'm confident about. That our God, the God of the Bible, has this brilliant ability, this amazing ability, to reach down in the mess of our life and pick out the most valuable parts of you and I. You see, He loves us. He says in His Word that He will never abandon us. He will never leave us. COVID-19 virus, furloughed, my job has been eliminated. Whatever our life brings us, our God looks down in the mess that exists and pulls out you and I and says, this is rich. This has flavor. This has texture. This has value. This has value. That's you and I. And so I hope during this season that you are looking at, after this disruption, what seeds have you planted? Those seeds that will bring a bountiful and good harvest. Seeds that talk about new skills, new friends, new people, new perspectives, new relationships. Perhaps that relationship with God is at the very top of that list. But I am confident that no matter what mess you're sitting in right now, there's a God that loves you, that has the capacity to reach down and find beauty in the midst of a mess. And that beauty is you. So I know you are in for an incredible session with the Career Transition Workshop. I pray this short message encouraged you, that no matter where you're at, God loves you and will see you through it. Those aren't just church words that as a pastor I'm supposed to say. I believe that with every ounce of my being. So enjoy your time. If there's any questions, if there's anything we can do at Stonebriar Community Church to help you out, perhaps you need a little more encouragement, please feel free to contact me. Again, my name is Steve Fisher. My phone number is 469-252-5368. My email, you can get it off our website. It's Steve Fisher, STEVEFISCHER @stonebriar.org. If there's anything we at Stonebriar can do we'd be privileged to do that. So have a great session. And again, Rex, and to your entire team, God bless you.
Okay, well, appreciate Steve taking the time to give us that message. And now we're going to introduce Gail Houston, who's going to do her presentation on job boards, social media, and more. Gail's an award-winning recruiter who currently works as an executive recruiter for Intuit, and she's been with them for the last 14 years, and is quite a leader in the DFW area, building social media strategy and a boot camp for recruiters and hiring managers. She spent 16 years at EDS, and she's the co-founder and current director of education for the DFW Recruiters Organization, and the co-founder of this workshop that you're attending today. And this workshop for over 20 years has helped over 19,000, almost 20,000 people in the DFW area. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to close this I'm going to close this, and if I know how. There we go. And I'm going to unshare my screen so that Gail can go ahead and start her presentation. So Gail, if you're ready, we'll go ahead with you.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Gail Houston. Can you guys see my screen okay?
I can.
You can? Okay, perfect.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, let me just try to get to where I can make it large. All right, well, thank you guys so much for attending, and I'm really excited to share the part of the workshop that we do, which is internet strategies that help you stand out in a crowd. So there's a few basics that we have to understand first that I'm going to cover, and then we'll start covering the internet. So first of all, you have to understand that recruiters are looking for you. And we're looking for you everywhere. We're looking for you on social media sites. We're looking for you on job boards and applicant tracking systems. We're even looking for you in the grocery store line, on the soccer field, as you're getting your prescriptions and your medications and things like that. It doesn't matter where we find you. What matters is the impression that you make. Are you somebody who is seen as a person that we want to work with? Are you seen as bitter and mean? So you really have to understand, no matter where you are, whether it's in person or online, you need to portray yourself as somebody who would make a great hire. But how do you get those recruiters to see you amongst the crowd, amongst everybody else? There's 40 million unemployed right now. We want to make sure that the folks that are attending our workshop can kind of rise above the rest and can be seen and be found. So one of the things we want to cover is how do recruiters search? A lot of people, I think sometimes we just have like a drawer, we just pull out resumes and we just magically have people. I know oftentimes I feel like that's what our hiring managers think. So let me explain to you a little bit about how we search. So first of all, we're going to search using keywords, locations, how recently was your resume uploaded to a site. So think about when you're wanting to go to an Italian restaurant. You don't go on Google and say, show me any Italian restaurant anywhere in the world, right? You say, an Italian restaurant near me, 5-star, or $3 signs, whatever it is, you're putting in the criteria for Google to try to help narrow so they can bring you the best results. We do the same thing. So we're going to use keywords. We're going to use words that are known in the industry like Java, UX, UI, marketing, chief architects, things like that. So those words that mean something to the outside world. Now, if you have a term at your company that is a made-up term, that isn't an industry standard term, like we used to be searching on a term called XD. We found that was a made-up term in our company. You want to make sure that you're using the right terms for the rest of the world. UX, that type of thing. It's the same thing with your title. If you're the Chief Officer of Happiness, that's not going to resonate to the rest of the world. You've got to be the Chief, People Officer or the Chief HR Officer, something like that, something that makes sense to other people. The recency issue has to do with back back in 2008, I believe it was, when we had kind of the .com bomb. Essentially, we would contact Java developers and we would say, hey, we've got this job for you. And Java developers would yell at us. They would tell us, I've already found a job. Why are you calling me? And so what happens is the applicants train the recruiters on how we search. So if we see something that was posted, 3 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago, a month ago, our assumption is you've already been placed, and we don't want to be yelled at. So the job board started putting in this recency where you could actually go in and say, hey, I'm going to upload my resume. I'm going to update my resume. Java developers figured it out first, so they used to go in and just change a symbol on their resume and resave it, and it would upload onto websites as being a recent resume. So you want to make sure, depending on which site you use, do they have something like this? And then depending on how available your skill set is to the rest of the world, you may need to update more frequently than somebody else. So a project manager, for instance, probably needs to update weekly, where a cloud architect may only need to update monthly. Everything depends on how available the skill set is in the recruiting communities, how available it is to find you guys as to how often you need to update. The other thing that you need to do is you need to make sure that you're looking at location. So recently, a lot of applicants have been just totally leaving off all of their address information off of resumes. And I understand why. They're afraid of identity theft and things like that. And so if you want to leave off your street name, if you even want to leave off maybe your little small city and maybe put a bigger city like Dallas or Fort Worth, do something like that and then put in one of those main zip codes. On an application, you actually need to put where you actually live. But on your resume, if you just want to say that you're, in the Dallas-Fort Worth area and the zip code where you think you're going to work is like 75024, that's in Plano, you might want to put that. And then recruiters typically come in and we do these mile radius searches. Now, Rex and I had an applicant one time. He was a lawyer in one of our workshops, and he raised his hand and he very politely said, why the heck do you think you get to discriminate against me, based on where I live? And I pointed out to him, if you apply to my job on the website, my assumption is that you know where our office is and that you're willing to look. Our experience has taught us, though, if we don't find somebody, within 25 miles, 30 miles in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, in California it may be 5 miles, 10 miles, that we have very little chance that you're even going to respond to us. And oftentimes you yell at us. And remember, recruiters are sensitive. You guys are training us how to find people. Now, if I have relocation budget, I'm not going to put in a location search if I'm doing a really hard search. I'm just going to try to find the very best person. So the other way we search is we use Boolean search terms. So depending on what site we're on, excuse me, depending on what site we're on, it may give us different fields to fill in and say, okay, I want them out of this location. I want them to have these skills. I want them to have these keywords. I want them to come from these companies. But there's other times when we might just be searching on Google. And so what we'll do is we'll come out there and we'll put in a search. And these are just some, real live examples of some different Boolean search strings. So you see that we're trying to use all sorts of different titles that we think you might have. Sometimes we even will search for a title that is misspelled. Because a lot of the technical folks, they will misspell things on their resume on purpose so they don't get bombarded by recruiters. So sometimes we'll even do that type of search. The places we search, we're going to search our applicant tracking system. It's also, called the corporate resume database. So it's essentially where you go to apply. Now, many people think that all applicant tracking systems are black holes. I've applied. I never get any response. They sent me through all of this stuff to do, and I still get no response. A lot of the companies are trying to make the application process easier. A lot of companies are trying to make sure that they've adopted a policy where every resume is reviewed. I know that my company has adopted that policy as well. Every resume is reviewed in the system. The one tip I want to give you when you're putting a resume into an applicant tracking system is make sure that you have your LinkedIn URL. The reason why you want your LinkedIn URL is maybe you applied to a position 2 years ago You're not actively looking right now, but I'm going to go back to my old jobs that were posted. I'm going to try to search the database to see if I can find somebody who, number one, has already expressed interest in my company. Number two, they're already indicating kind of what job area they fit in. But when I get to your resume, I know that you now have 2 additional years of experience. So that LinkedIn URL allows me to very quickly click and go and find you and see what you've been doing the last 2 years. Maybe you've received a promotion and now you're too high level for the job. Maybe you've received enough experience that now makes you qualified for the job where 2 years ago you weren't qualified. Make it easy on the recruiters and put that LinkedIn URL so that you can be found. Now, the other place we search is job boards. And so this is an example of a search that we had done off of Monster. And so when we do a search, remember, I'm not going to click on every single Italian restaurant that you show me. I'm going to click on the ones that have the 5 stars. Probably I'm not even going to go to page 2 of my search and Google looking for that Italian restaurant. I'm probably going to select something off the first page. It's kind of the same thing on job boards. When we do these searches, depending on how good my search is, it may give me 25 applicants. I might have time to get through all 25. It may give me 100 applicants. I may not have enough time to get to all 100 because I may have other interviews or hiring manager meetings lined up. So on these job boards, you have to give us enough information to know that we want to click on you. So this is just an example of 2 different people. I know that they have the skills that I'm looking for because they showed up in my Boolean search. But if I'm looking quickly, I'm probably going to click on the top person rather than the bottom person because the top person is telling me they match what I'm looking for. All right? Now, when you think about social, you need to ask yourself, where do recruiters search on social? Is it just LinkedIn? Is it just Facebook? And in honesty, it's all of them. It is absolutely every single site. It is Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, Pinterest, Instagram. We even search on Snapchat. There's companies that have done Tinder searches. I know that one's hard to believe, but they've actually hired somebody off of a Tinder ad that they ran. So we actually search all the sites. So what I'm going to start with today is I'm going to start with LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the most important tool in the recruiter's toolbox. 90% of the recruiters are on LinkedIn. I've even had recruiters tell me I can't find them on LinkedIn, so I'm not going to be able to fill the position. That's when we try to educate that recruiter and we try to show them there's a lot of other sites that you can search on as well. But we know that we need to do a lot of training on LinkedIn for applicants and for recruiters so that you guys can try to make that match. One thing that's really important in LinkedIn right now especially is that you have a photo. It needs to be a high-res photo. That doesn't mean that you have to go to a professional photographer. It just means that you need to have a headshot. In 6 months to a year, Rex and I could be recommending to the rest of the world that you can have, just your eye, just your ear out there on LinkedIn. But that's not where we're at today. We're still recommending that you go ahead and you do a headshot because you don't know what company is going to be looking for you. You're 7 times more likely to be viewed with a photo than without a photo. The next thing that we want to talk about is we want to talk about your headline. So there are job search groups out there that will tell you, okay, Foster, you're looking for a job, take off that headline and put that you're open for opportunities. And that's not the recommendation for this workshop. We want to make sure that you understand that even if you're laid off, even if you're a new grad, you still have a certain skill set that you need to put out there because this is how we review people. So you want to put that you're a director of finance, a director of FP&A, a marketing brand director, a front-end Java engineer. You want to put that headline so that we know that we found the right person. This is an example of a search that I did last night in a live training class with a bunch of entry-level kind of cybersecurity folks and experienced cybersecurity folks that were coming out of the military that are working and going through some training. So we ran across this one person's profile, and the person said that they're an Air Force veteran seeking a cybersecurity position. My first inkling was this was an Air Force veteran that was taking a cybersecurity class in order to get a brand new job in a brand new field. That was my first inkling. When we scrolled down further, we actually found out that this was a cybersecurity specialist with a secret clearance that had over 11 years in cybersecurity. we just didn't realize that because, again, there's a lot of people who are getting trained right now in order to try to make career transitions and things like that. But it was great because I was able to show them, here's my first thought, that this is somebody entry level. And I said that before we even scroll down. Typically, if we're doing a search, we're going really fast and we're building projects and we're throwing people we think have potential in these projects, and then we're going to come back and look at them later. I don't know if I would have put this person in the project. So she should have said on her headline that she's a cybersecurity expert with a secret clearance, and she can put on there that she's an Air Force veteran as well. But because she's trying to, transition out of the Air Force and into a job with a corporation, the cybersecurity part should have been first. So that was a great example last night during that workshop, and we added that slide in today. All right, there's another area in LinkedIn where you can add your contact information. Make sure that you put your email address. A lot of you folks that are out there looking, you may already have your work email in here, and now you've been laid off, so you need to go in and update that. We still typically recommend that you have 2 email addresses. If you're on Twitter, you can put your Twitter handle in there as well. All right, so there is a way to tell folks, that you are open to a new job. So what happens when you are on LinkedIn, you have 2 choices now. This is another thing that I found out last night. I thought that when you tell recruiters you're open to a new job, originally it was only to tell recruiters that had the LinkedIn Recruiter account. This is a really expensive tool that recruiters use to find people and to connect with people. We have unlimited emails, things like that. We can see people that we're not connected to through this LinkedIn Recruiter tool. So when they first put it out and you said, hey, I'm open to a new career, it was only shown to the recruiters that have that LinkedIn Recruiter tool. Now, they have also said that you can show everybody on LinkedIn if you're open. So if you're currently unemployed, you may want to open it up broader because not all recruiters have that tool. All right, so that's something new. It's something that I don't know how long it's been there because I hadn't seen it before, but I thought it was interesting. The other thing to understand is that the status lasts 90 days. So a lot of people, they'll get a job, especially in the economy the way it was, back January, February, they would get a job very quickly. And then we would contact them, and they're like, I'm not looking for a job anymore. And they would, again, get mad at us and, call us names, things like that. And it was really sad because they're the one that left their status on. So once you find a job, you need to go and you need to remove your status. I've also seen folks put things in their summary section or even in their headline that they have been impacted by COVID-19. So recruiters are starting to search for the terms COVID-19 as well. Don't replace, though, your entire headline with COVID-19. All right, you still want to be that director of marketing. All right. Okay. All right. Now, in your LinkedIn profile, your summary section has to sell. All right. And LinkedIn made a change where only the first 210 characters of your summary section show. So it's usually 2.5 lines that show up. You can click and you can see more detail. But you have to remember that the recruiter probably isn't going to click. They're going to look very quickly and they're going to see, okay, this is a UK designer. Okay, she's working on a small business application. So I'm learning very quickly what she's doing. The other recommendation that we have from this workshop, though, is to add your email address right here. And again, it's because not every recruiter can afford that fancy, expensive LinkedIn recruiter tool. So a lot of recruiters are trying to find you without having any of these special tools. So when they can see your email address, it makes it easy because they can contact you directly instead of using the just very few InMails that they have the ability to use. If you put an email address out here publicly, you want to make sure you do a couple of things. First of all, try to use your name. If you're applying for a job with me and, your name is Lizzie and you're using your husband's email address, Kevin, when you're emailing me and I'm looking first thing in the morning, I'm looking for 2 things. I'm looking for, my hiring managers, and then I'm looking for applicants that I work with, and I'm scrolling really quickly. If your name is Lizzie but your email address says Kevin, I'm not going to recognize you. I don't have that type of brain capacity to remember that you in particular are using your husband's email address, and I need to make sure I'm watching out for that. You also want to make sure that you have an appropriate email address that you're sharing. I typically recommend when you're in a job search mode that you have a job search email address. That's the one that you're using for your resume. Don't use your family address. I also say don't use like an email address that's connected to like a paid service, like a Verizon.net or something like that. Because if you're unemployed, you may have Verizon today, you may have them 6 months from now, but you may not be able to afford them 8 months from now. Grab a Gmail address. Use a Gmail address, make it professional, and share that, but always, always check it. Even when you find a new job, still check it. You can actually forward all the emails from that address to your family account, but you're not showing, that personal non-job search related email address. All right, in your career section, you want to make sure that you're using keywords, because if you remember that first slide when I said we're using keywords, if you are using some fancy term at your company that's made up, I'm not going to be able to find you. So this is a search where we just did it real simply. We just said we want to see the word finance and we want to see the word Intuit. LinkedIn highlights it for the recruiter so that we can see it really quickly when we're doing a search. Make sure you use keywords, and make sure you do your current position, any of your past positions. Now, you'll see in my LinkedIn account that I also include my email address in every single position I have. Again, it's because I would rather applicants email me rather than InMail me. Okay, you can also make your summary live, by adding media. So this is adding things like YouTube videos. Maybe you've done a presentation. Maybe you have, a slide share or a PowerPoint presentation that you've done and that you want to share. So you can add that as well. You need to look at the privacy settings. There's 3 different tabs. You need to make sure that you go through every single tab on LinkedIn. One of the most important things you need to do is you need to capture your signature line URL that you're going to use. So it's going to be your LinkedIn URL. You're going to try to go in and you're going to try to capture your name. Right now it's going to have your name and it's going to have like a whole bunch of numbers after it. So you want to get rid of all of those numbers, especially if you're in marketing. If you're in marketing, you need to know how to do this, but you need to get rid of all those numbers and you need to capture your LinkedIn URL. You're going to put this in signature lines, you're going to put it on your resume, and you're going to put it on your business card. You may not be able to grab your name. I did it very early on. Any other Gail Houston now has to come up with something else, so maybe they're sticking in the middle initial, maybe they're saying G Houston, but just play with it until you can come up with your name. The other thing that you need to do is you need to make sure, give me 1 second, it went too far. Jeff, if you're on, I'm having trouble getting to where I can go back on my slides with Zoom. Let me see. Sorry, guys. Give me 1 second. Let me go back up. Okay, right here. Sorry. Here we go. Okay. All right. The other thing that you need to do is you need to make sure that you have a public profile URL. So what that means is if I'm in Google, maybe I don't have a LinkedIn account at all. If I'm a recruiter and I'm in Google, I'm going to go in and I'm going to type things like, I want to see a recruiter at Facebook working on product management. All right, I'm going to do that type of search. If I'm doing that type of search and the recruiter shows up and they don't have their public profile clicked to make it visible, and if they don't have all of these slider boxes clicked to say show, then what's going to happen is you're not really going to see anything. All right, so if I just click a few of those first boxes, you're not seeing my headline, you're not seeing my summary, you're not seeing my articles, things like that. So make sure that you make your profile visible so that you can be found off of LinkedIn, because recruiters they're creating these really extensive Boolean searches to try to find you. They're doing site URL searches, things like that to try to find you off of LinkedIn as well. All right, so after you get your LinkedIn profile all up to date and everything, you want to make sure that you add connections. Think about college alumni connections, work peers, former work peers, families, neighbors, recruiters from targeted companies. If you've interviewed with a recruiter, just ask them, can I send you a LinkedIn invite? If you've interviewed with a hiring manager, can I send you a LinkedIn invite? All right, the other thing you want to do is you want to follow companies, because companies will post open positions. Also, when I'm searching in that fancy tool, LinkedIn Recruiter, there is a site where I can narrow down. So there's 5,000 candidates here in a super easy search that I did. There's 1,100 that are more likely to engage, and there's 599 that are open to new career opportunities, and then there's 131 that are engaged with my talent brand. The people who follow my company, you guys are engaged with my talent brand. All right, so I already know you're following me. LinkedIn tells recruiters 70% of people who are following your company page are interested in the job. All right, you also want to utilize status updates, and you do that just from the home page of LinkedIn. You know, your name will be over here, and this is where you add your update. I add updates, 2-3 times a week that just say simple things like an applicant tip. I'm building my brand. You may want to share articles if you're in data science, and there's a new article about data science out. Somebody might be posting about data science, so you want to go ahead and you want to click on their updates. If you comment on somebody's update, do not be bitter. There's somebody who follows me who comments on a lot of my updates. He's usually pretty bitter. I don't know why. I've never met him. I have no idea why he's bitter. I don't know his story. But you can just tell that he's angry about something. And so I try to engage in a very positive fashion. Sometimes I'm just like, I'm sorry you had that experience. What was interesting, though, is another candidate emailed me and said, hey, I wanted to comment on this, but I didn't want this person to kind of start a feud. And she goes, I would never hire that person at my company. I'd never recommend them. So people are reading your comments, and you need to be positive. You need to be upbeat, because never once ever in my entire life has a hiring manager come up and said, Gail, I'd really like you to find me a bitter and mean person. That's just not what they do. So don't be that person that somebody's afraid to recommend. All right, you want to see, if you are showing up in different searches. My company actually uses something called Elevate. It basically says how many people are looking, commenting, posting on the status updates, that you're doing for your company. And what I like about it is it's teaching me how to brand myself better, because I'm kind of getting a score. All right. So for me, I can look at Elevate, and right now I'm number 1 in my company. I've been number 1 for about 4 days. Hopefully I'll stay there. But again, I've had to learn a lot about how to brand myself. You can do the same thing in looking at like who's viewed your profile and things like that. Is your profile getting looked at? If not, go back and add keywords, add information. All right, I'm going to skip through some of LinkedIn. This slide share will be made available if you want some different information. All right, another area to talk about is Facebook. That's the other giant in the room. Now, where recruiters, 90% of recruiters are using LinkedIn, recruiters are still learning how to use Facebook. Applicants are still learning how to use Facebook for your job search. But it is amazing. I've learned more on Facebook for my job as a recruiter. I've also engaged with so many, warm and sincere people in some of the groups that I join. So my very favorite group is a group called Women in Product. This group started from a dinner that Facebook used to have with women product managers. Then they decided to take it online. Then they decided to hold conferences. They live stream all of their meetings. It's amazing. The last time I checked, the group on Facebook, I think, has around 18,000 members. It's amazing, and they ask really good questions. And what's awesome is somebody might say, hey, I've got an interview at Google. Can somebody tell me how to prepare for it? Can somebody do some mock interviews with me? Things like that. The other women on the group will say, hey, I interviewed at Google. Let me walk you through my experience. Or I work at Google. Let me walk you through my experience. So you want to find those groups that help you in whatever job it is you have. So if you're a cybersecurity person, find cybersecurity groups. If you're a marketer, find marketing groups. If you're a CPA, find those groups. Not every group is going to be, great. There's going to be some groups out there with hardly any discussion, but you do want to find those groups that really make a difference. And again, Women in Product is my favorite for product managers. You want to make sure on Facebook that you're using the About Me section properly. You want to go ahead and make your work public, your education public, the professional email address or your job search email address public. You want to make sure that all your pictures, your videos, any personal posts and things like that are private. You also want to make sure that your birth date, the month, and the day of your birth, if you want to put that out there, have it for friends only. Make sure, though, that you do the year of your birth privately and that you do your cell phone number privately as well. All right. The other thing I want to point out on Facebook is there is a second email address that most people don't know about. It's kind of grayed out, and it's just called message request. If I'm not friends with you, or maybe you're in a group with me, most of those emails are going to the message request box. So just make sure you check it, because somebody could be trying to connect with you. All right, let's go ahead and explore some of the unexpected social sites. Employers are actually using Snapchat to engage talent. One of our recruiters by the name of Charles Martin, he very early on grabbed the user ID, the intern guy for Intuit. He's out on the college campuses, and he'll do a snap to students saying, hey, meet me in the cafeteria for coffee at this time. Or, hey, I'm going over to the library. I'm happy to review your resume. He's actually been able to increase his hiring at the Ivy League schools because of the engagement he has with the students. Now, you would think that Charles is our youngest university recruiter. He's not. I'm not going to tell you his age, but he's close to me. But he understands and he knows how the students want to be communicated with, and it's fabulous. All of my college kids follow him. They think he's the funniest recruiter ever. McDonald's actually uses Snapchat to let you do an online application. There's other companies that are trying to attract you on Instagram. One of the first ads that I ever saw on Instagram is just this very simple. This recruiter actually drew this and put it out on Instagram at Intel to try to find people. This bar actually has an ad out there with, a cutout saying this could be you. And it's working. We've seen a lot of successes of employers being able to hire you off of Instagram. Twitter is another place where you can engage. There's a lot of jobs being posted on Twitter. Applicants are engaged as well out there. This applicant said that he's using social media to find a job. What was interesting is I thought it was a great campaign. I thought he did a wonderful job. I sent him a direct message, and he never answered me. So if you're going to do something like this, just make sure you're following up. All right, companies are actually using geofencing to engage with potential applicants in real time, and this is, my favorite. Twitter is using Fly Hire. Uber is using, is this place driving you mad? And Pinterest is using Are You Pinned Down? And so what happens is when you go in certain areas, you're going to be served up ads on these different sites. So that's called geofencing. All right, there's applicants who are out on Twitter, and there's employers out on Twitter as well. Pinterest. It allows you to have kind of more of a visual resume. This is the example of using Tinder to recruit. This company needed somebody to go to Cincinnati, and they invited you through Tinder to apply for a job. They actually selected one person, flew him out, and he was hired. Other places that we search are sites like YouTube. There's a lot of people who will go out on YouTube, and maybe they'll talk about Java. They might talk about, how to create a marketing campaign or a social media campaign. They might talk about, how they put together a lesson plan if they're a teacher. So I do a lot of searching when I'm doing a new need, and I'm saying, okay, teach me, container technology for dummies, or, what is Kubernetes technology, something like that, because I'm not technical. I don't know all this stuff. So I go out to YouTube, and I see the people who are talking about it, and then I try to recruit them, because if you're talking about it, it means you know something about it. And again, you don't have to be employed to make these kind of videos. If you know your subject area, go out and make a video. You'll get recruited. All right, we also look at Google profiles. Again, this is where we're trying to find people who may not be on certain sites. We look at different people who are blogging, because if you're blogging, you probably know something. I do a lot of searches on SlideShare as well, because again, if you're presenting, my assumption is that you know something about the topic that you're presenting on. And again, you don't have to go out and present at a conference. You can build a SlideShare presentation, which is it's a simple PowerPoint. You can talk about something that you know, and then you can post it. So while you're unemployed, do some of this stuff to see maybe if you can get some traction. We also search associations. So we'll search things like board members, but the thing that recruiters really like to search are speakers. Because again, the board members work really hard to make sure they bring in speakers who really know about a topic. So this is, Java Mug, and they're bringing in all these speakers. I read the speakers, and I go try to recruit Ken. And next I'll try to recruit Mark, and then Matthew. All right, we also sit in meetups. Like if you don't think a recruiter is lurking and stalking wherever you happen to be engaging online, you're wrong. We're everywhere. We're definitely out there. We look at people who attend events. If we're sponsoring events, sometimes we can get a list of the event attendees. We search alumni sites. Right now, due to COVID-19, there are a lot of companies, or maybe people who used to work at these companies, they're creating Google Docs, and they're putting everybody at that particular company that was laid off. Everybody, is volunteering to put their information on the list. The companies are gathering that information. I've gathered over 85 tabs of folks that have been laid off so far, and we are working on how do we engage with these people, when can we bring them on. Last Friday, I got an urgent request saying, do you have any interns, that were part of, an offer reject or something like that. So we must have had somebody maybe not show up. And so we very quickly pulled people off the list, and hopefully one of those folks that were impacted got our offer. There's other sites that we search as well. You can do a visual resume if nothing else is working. Graphic designers may want to look into that. You don't have to do it. These are all just additional suggestions. One thing that you really need to make sure you do, though, is your signature line. You need to make sure that no matter what email you're sending, that you still have what you do. So if you're sending out an email to the soccer team, make sure that you have that you're an HR business partner, an HR director, a Java developer, because in my neighborhood alone, there's like 6, 7 recruiters, that live in this neighborhood. On the baseball team, there were 3 recruiters, that were working. So you never know where somebody is going to be looking for you. All right, and again, there's a couple of other sites. The back part of this deck is just going to, talk to you about some of the benefits and danger. We're not going to cover this part today because we're running out of time, but it's all going to be available in the deck. All right? All right, John, I'll give it back to you.
Okay, thank you, Gail.
You're welcome.
I know that the world of social media is very broad, and you could do an all-day seminar on it to get into all the nooks and crannies. So appreciate that. Now that presentation is going to be posted where, please?
We're going to try to put it on SlideShare. It's not uploading right now for some reason, so as soon as I have the location, I'll let you know. And we're also trying to put it on LinkedIn. I may have to split the presentation in half. It was saying it might be too large. So it'll be on my LinkedIn account. Everybody's welcome to send me an invitation to Gail_Houston@intuit.com on LinkedIn. And you can just look at my profile and it'll be there. All right, just give me a day or so to figure out what's wrong and why it's not uploading.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Just to reinforce, you can, when you're in LinkedIn, if you go to the upper right-hand side of the screen and click on the tic-tac-toe box up there, I don't know what the official name for that symbol is, but when the drop-down menu comes, you can go to SlideShare from LinkedIn, or you can just type in slideshare.net in your browser, and then type in Gail, G-A-I-L, Houston, and her presentations will come up from there. Okay, well, we've had some questions come up. So what I'm going to do now,
John, you muted yourself.
Hi, John, we cannot hear you. John, do you realize you're on mute?
I'm going to permanently, I'm going to permanently unmute myself, and see if I can Oh, my video is muted. I'm just clicking away here. I've got an iPad, a phone, and this thing going on at the same time. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen for a moment. And here we have our recruiter panel, or our expert panel, I should say. I'm just acting as the facilitator. We've got Rex Sowett, who has been the leader of this workshop group for almost 2 decades. Rex is a human resources executive. He is currently a manager of recruitment and staffing at JAARS, and I can't remember what that acronym is, Rex.
That's our aviation, air, and radio services team.
Okay, great. Thank you. We have, of course, Gail Houston, who you just heard from, and we also have Foster Williams, the founder of SearchForYouInc.com and the co-founder of the Career Search Network, and Jeff Morris, the founder of Career DFW and CareerUSA.org. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, a lot of these questions are targeted to Gail. And so, but if anybody, I'm gonna share them with Gail, and then if anybody else wants to chime in, we shall do it that way. Okay. First of all, Mike Lauer was just curious, Gail, what ATS system you used, what on the images on your slides at the beginning of your presentation.
So the job board that we had used was Monster. That one was taken a while ago, so it's probably an outdated slide. I believe the job board that we used at the time was a job board that we called Scout. I don't recall the real name. It might have been Resumex or something like that. It's not from my current system right now. It's an older slide.
Okay. Thank you. And
Sure.
to the whole panel, I want to ask, how many major ATS suites are there out there?
I don't have an exact number. There's a ton.
Yeah, but I mean the major ones, the ones that have the largest market share.
I honestly, I don't know the exact number. I would imagine that there's probably 4 or 5 that, you know, a lot of the big companies use.
Right.
But there's a lot of startups that are coming up that are really exciting. They're using a lot of AI and things like that. So they're starting to get in with some companies, and they could overtake some of the majors.
Yeah. Okay, so it is a very competitive market. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's Taleo and iCIMS and Workday. Those are some of the big major players. JobVite, Greenhouse. Those are some of the other newer ones that I've seen.
Okay.
And then there's a whole host of others.
10 now, John.
Sorry, Foster?
There may be upwards of 10 select ones right now.
Mm-hmm.
There have been a couple of more that have been sponsored by companies like Google and other big companies like that, even Amazon, of course, being one of them. So we'll be hearing more about those as we progress through this year and probably the beginning of this year.
Okay, thanks, Foster. Now, Shirley Kelly wanted to ask, how often should we update our headshot? Now, I will just direct that to anybody on the panel who wants to answer. My opinion is that you shouldn't use your high school yearbook shot if you're over 40, but
yeah, I always say you don't have to update it that often. It just depends on how dramatic the changes are. I've seen some where they're putting in their 5-year-old picture. Again, that's not something that Rex and I and the team recommend right now. In the future, though, because pictures on LinkedIn are getting more and more casual, it could be a free-for-all, and, you know, in the future. But right now, we're just recommending a professional headshot. You know, change it every couple of years, you know, every 10 years. It just depends on how much you change. Some people look the exact same. You know, other people change quite dramatically.
Really. And Valerie Jones asks, since the About section in LinkedIn only shows a couple of lines, should your prior accomplishments, in other words, dollars saved for the company, be included in your experience section?
So you can put all of your different accomplishments in the career section under each job. So think about how you do a resume, but there may be some overall accomplishments that you also want to highlight in the summary section. So maybe at different companies you manage 5 call centers here, 30 call centers there, 125 there. In your summary section, you're going to be, a call center, a vice president of call centers that's managed 125 call centers over, 50 locations. So you're going to kind of summarize more at the top and then really more explain it, later in the LinkedIn profile.
Okay, so in the About section or the Summary section, you give them the 5,000-foot overview of who you are, and then peel that back and get more into it under the Experience section.
Right, like on my resume, it says that I'm an award-winning recruiter, but I don't list all of my awards in that summary section. I just say I'm an award-winning recruiter, and then down at the very bottom of my resume, if they get that far, that's where it lists the different awards, and they're either going to like them or they're not, but they at least know, oh, she's won some awards. Maybe there's some more information lower down. So I kind of tease them at the top and hope they read through.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Leon Nesbitt wants to know, what is happening with the virtual remote job activity? He's noticed postings coming from Virtual Vocation, which require a nominal fee to access the job postings. So I guess the question is, are there services and recruiting groups out there that are focusing on hiring for remote positions or work from home positions? Leon, if you're on the call and you want to clarify that, please press your space bar and let us know.
So I know on our career site, we will say that we have remote jobs, and then that's picked up by Indeed, which is a scraper. It scrapes all of the jobs. And then we post to a whole bunch of other career sites. And so I don't believe that you have to pay for something unless you just can't find it any other way. I don't want any job seeker paying for anything if they don't have to, because again, you don't know how long your pot of money is going to last.
Agreed.
So try something else first. And then if you are going to pay something, do your research and make sure they're valid, because there's a lot of scammers out there right now. There's a whole bunch of scammers. There's a site on Facebook called Virtual Employment Opportunities. It doesn't cost anything to join that Facebook group. And I have seen landing after landing after landing on that site. So I might try that one first before I go to any paid sites. Excellent
information. Thank you, Gail. And I'm going to ask Rex on this, advice for career changers. Michelle asks, how to demonstrate transferable skills on resume and LinkedIn without having the exact keywords that a traditional candidate might have for that position.
Rex, you're on mute.
When candidates are looking for that transformation to jump, let's say, from real estate into operations logistics, one of the things that I always tell people is that not necessarily the resume is going to get you there. What's going to be a more potent and important type of tool that you have is your networking. It's your network that can help you translate your current skill set into another area. So the resume is good, but it's now network that is going to be more important if you want to transfer your skill sets from, let's say, being a teacher into corporate.
You know, and sometimes you can volunteer your time. So, for instance, I'm a recruiter, but I could go and volunteer to do social media for a nonprofit and get exposure to social media that way if I want to go back into being a social media manager. If I want to do career transition instead and work for like a Lee Hecht Harrison or something like that, I utilize all my volunteer experience. So if there's something that you can do to gain valuable experience, you know, maybe you're a brand new college graduate with a computer science degree and you've got some mobile technology training, go try to develop a mobile app. You know, there's 8-year-olds developing mobile apps and they're publishing them and they're doing well. So always think about, is there anything you can do to try to gain some real world experience? It just may not be paid.
Okay. All right. And Deborah asked, does a 2-year gap hurt your chances of getting looked at from a recruiter?
It just depends on the flexibility of the hiring manager. I know that my company has what's called like a returnship. So a lot of the companies, especially when the economy is thriving, you know, they create opportunities where they can try to help somebody with those kind of gaps get back into the workforce. You know, and again, back in, you know, January, February, tons of companies, I recruit mostly in the Bay Area, tons of companies had those kind of returnship programs. Maybe a little bit harder right now, but again, networking, like Rex said, you know, get to know people in the industry, volunteer, go to the association meetings, do something so that they can see that you've been able to keep up with the industry through training.
John, can I add on to that?
Absolutely.
Deborah, thank you so much for that question. When you look at a gap, one of the things that I look at is there anything that this individual is raising their skill set to try to bridge that 2 years? Are they staying at least current in their 2 years? I'll give you an example. In IT, have they done more certifications? Have they taken 1 or 2 classes in, let's say, networking or cybersecurity? Are they the 2 years? The 2-year gap is not as important to me as is this candidate at least showing enough grit and hustle to stay in their field and update it. Some of the things that can really help are certifications. I love to see volunteer work in there as well. Taking online classes, taking classes on college campuses are going to make differences for you.
Are you finished?
Yes, I'm sorry. My screen just froze up. Sorry.
Oh, okay. I just didn't want to cut you off. Let's see here. Okay. Dolores asked a question for Gail. Gmail has the ability to filter email addresses by adding a plus sign before the @gmail.com domain. And so it becomes your mail plus LinkedIn-about@gmail.com. She was thinking of adding that tag to the email address on the about section in LinkedIn so she can better identify where people are getting her email address from. Do you have any thoughts on this technique?
It's the first time I've heard of that technique, so I'll have to look into it. So I'm not going to comment on that one right now. There was a question, though, that we missed about having 2 Facebook profiles, personal and professional.
Yes.
I personally don't recommend that. You know, I think that it just becomes too much to manage, and then you have a whole bunch of social media profiles out there that are dead. So what you do on Facebook and on these other social sites is you make sure that you're utilizing the privacy settings. You know, on Facebook, if you're posting about, you know, a dinner or birthday dinner that your family had, that needs to be friends only. The next time you go to post, you might be posting about an event that you're going to attend for marketers. You want to change that privacy setting to be public because it's okay for that setting, you know, for that particular post to go ahead and be public. So I change my settings all the time. Facebook is supposed to have something like where your default is whatever it is you set it as. But what I've discovered on Facebook is if I posted something public, one time, the next time everything's going to be public, even though my default was friends. So I just always make sure that I am posting and I'm looking at that setting each time. I have all of my pictures set to either private or to friends only. I do the same thing with videos, things like that. And then anything that I think is okay to post publicly, I just make sure that those are on. So it's my work, my education, things like that. So that's how I separate it. I can't stop you from creating 2 profiles, though. If you do create 2 profiles and Facebook finds out, they typically will kick both profiles off the system. So if you are going to create another profile and you want it to be professional, you need to create a page on Facebook instead.
Okay. Good, thank you. Tim Robinson noticed that clicking on LinkedIn's small circle photo will sometimes have 3 responses: duplicate small circle, larger circle, or largest rectangle with more detail outside the circle. Are the larger photos premium options?
I honestly, I don't know.
I don't know either.
I just have always had the same photo. I don't know if Jeff knows or Rex.
Yeah, I don't have information on that question.
Jeff, you got any experience with that?
No idea. No, I'm trying to look it up right now.
Okay. 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 Let's see. Can Gail repeat the Facebook group for virtual opportunities?
Yes, it's called VEO, Virtual Employment Opportunities. I've seen a lot of folks land at Amazon and places like that, on that group. A couple of other places as well. I don't recall where else I've seen landings. But out of all the recent groups that I've joined since COVID, that's the one where I've seen the most landings.
Mm-hmm. And Alkeisha wants to know, how do you reflect contract work on your work history? Which company name do you use?
So what I recommend, it depends on how long you've been contracting and how many different employers you worked for. So what I try to do for contractors, and Rex and Foster definitely, chime in. Yeah. I try to say, okay, if I've been contracting for 10 years for 5 different employers, I'm going to put that I'm a contract recruiter from, 2005 to now, right? And then underneath that, I'm going to break down the 5 different employers that I've worked at. I'm not going to do, Intuit contract, Facebook contract, Google contract, because recruiters look at things in blocks, and you don't want to appear to be a job hopper. And when you're a contractor, you're not necessarily a job hopper. You're a contractor. You're a consultant. You're going from project to project. So it's helping the recruiter's mind have the mindset that, oh, they're a consultant or a contractor. I'm going to see a variety of jobs, but they did it for this, length of period of time. Right. So hopefully that makes sense.
Let me give you an example of that, John. Let's say you're in IT and you've contracted for 7 years. How I would lay out in the resume would be something along the lines of information technology contract professional from 2009 to present. That way you don't have to segment or show jumping from one job to another job to another job. A lot of recruiters will pick up, wait a minute, why is this person jumping so much? The reason why is that contracts start, contracts end, and now you show a 9-year period, 7-year period doing contracts.
And I'd like to jump in on that as well, if I may. When we put down the companies that we work for, usually those are companies that are a little bit more impressive, so to speak, in a recruiter's eye. So you might want to put down an IBM, you might want to put down a Citigroup or Verizon or something like that to boost your seemingly very corporate abilities.
There's also things that are like considered white labeled, So, for instance, at Intuit, if we have a contractor working at Intuit, they don't have that they're from Manpower or PeerPoint. They have Intuit on their LinkedIn profiles. In their resume, they might even put Intuit first, and then they might put in parentheses, on contract through Manpower, on contract through PeerPoint, on their actual resumes. But we're considered, we do things white label because we have a better shot of, a Java developer responding to Intuit than we might from Manpower or PeerPoint, a company that, they may or may not heard of, or they may have a different impression of. A lot of people look at Manpower and think it's an administrative company. They actually do a lot of different types of recruiting. But there's a perception, and so that's why, we make sure we're white labeled on all of our contractors for recruiting, as an example.
Okay, well, the next question from Lynn Shepard, I'm going to direct towards Rex and Foster. If you took a demotion or lower level job due to downsizing, how should you reflect that in your resume or work history?
Rex, I'll let you go first on that one.
Yeah. What I would do is, even though you took a perceived demotion, what you do in that position, regardless of being a lower level position, there is high value in that position. What I would do is I would emphasize all of the skills that you utilized and the accomplishments that you had in that position. Emphasize the scope, scale, importance, value, results that you had in that position. And when you do that, it tends to not show as a demotion or a low level. It shows now as a valued role that you next took in your career journey.
Well said, yeah.
Yeah. Another thing that's happened, guys, some of you guys know companies. There have been 2 or 3 banks that have gotten out of the mortgage industry that they used to carry before. And when you performed a function in that department, you may have had a managerial position. The company deemed you as a valued employee with your skill sets. So when they got rid of that department, they didn't want to fire you. They didn't want to lay you off. They wanted to use you in a different department. And because you had this skill set, you may have taken up that very skill set, that very focused job in another department in which you were not a manager. Those are the kind of things that you want to explain in an interview, because when we're all in an interview, guys, when recruiters and hiring managers are asking you specific questions, you can kind of get a feel for where they're going. Explain what happened in those companies, especially in a situation like that totally makes sense.
Okay, thank you. Barbara Townsend asked, on LinkedIn, do you recommend we create a new entry under experience to alert that we are in the search mode? When you have that, then you can be all-star. Without it, you are not. What is your opinion? Using the open to job opportunities feature, is that adequate? Anybody who wants to? Go ahead, Gail.
Sorry, I know I'm talking a lot. Sorry, guys. So I have seen people do that, and I don't have a problem with it at all, as long as they're still utilizing their title, things like that. The thing about LinkedIn is if you get laid off and you've only been laid off for a short time, there's no requirement that you immediately rush out the day that you get impacted and you change your date. You might want to leave it out there for just a short time. I mean, be honest with people. You've clicked on the Open to Career Opportunities tab, but again, you don't have to rush out that day. Now, if it's been a while, I think that this is another, it's another great option is to put out there that you're looking. I saw it a couple of times this past week.
Let me jump in. I think what you may want to do is for your job, so create a job titles if you want to get back to all-star status, put in the job title you're looking for. The name of the company becomes your phone number so they can easily reach out to you. And then you want to list 3 or 4 bullet points of what it is you do and how you help companies so people would want to call you.
Jeff, can you do an email address rather than a phone number?
I don't know. I haven't tried that. But I imagine company name, you can make it whatever you'd want.
Yeah, I'm just more protective over my phone number than I am an email address that I'm using for job search.
Well, and anybody, if that's the case and you want to be careful with your phone number, you may want to investigate a Google Voice number, because this is a free number you can get. You can then have it bounce to your other phone number. So anybody who wants to be really protective of your cell phone number, you may want to try a Google Voice number.
Hey Foster, this is Bob Ernst. If I could just jump in on that, that's we're using that to find people right now that are furloughed that are not sure they're going to get rehired. So, you know, especially like you mentioned, mortgage industry or insurance, you know, if they want to become a financial advisor, that's one way we're going to find out, well, hey, we can reach out to that person and introduce the opportunity to them and see if they're interested in it. If not, we're not going to find them.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks for joining us too.
Oh,
Yeah,
thanks for putting us
haven't
on.
seen you in a while, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, Connor Rogan has a question. In the past 10 years, I've worked for small, privately owned enterprises with no opportunities for growth, and the roles have always been tactical. So I don't have a list of career advancements / promotions. Would that reflect negatively on recruiters?
Yeah, it just depends on the recruiter and the hiring manager. I mean, some people understand because maybe they've been in your shoes. They work for smaller companies with no opportunities. You might have, you know, been raising your kids, so you haven't taken promotions and opportunities because you just simply can't fit it in with, you know, raising your children and things like that. Some recruiters are very understanding. Other recruiters aren't. Some hiring managers are understanding and other hiring managers aren't. You can't change, though, your past. The only thing you can do is try to make sure whatever job you did, that you're reflecting the accomplishments and the highlights from those jobs, you know, in your description, because there's always some type of success in your job. You just have to figure out how to say it.
Quantitative,
you know, that's the hard part.
Quantitatively, right.
Yeah, if you can. I mean, if you can't do it quantitatively, there's still ways to write. Like there was a kid who wrote a resume. He's in college. He wrote a resume about what he did with his marketing organization, and it was actually better than most of the marketing resumes that I've written with real experience.
Mm-hmm.
And he told how he grew his organization, you know, how he did social media for his organization. It was impressive. His degree was actually in rhetoric, which apparently means writing, and he does it really well. I had to go look up what that meant because I didn't know.
Okay. We've got a lot of that on this call, rhetoric,
yeah.
But we're down to the 2-minute mark. There was one question I think I skipped, and Mike asked, is there any guidance you hear from companies like Lee Hecht Harrison or Right Management that you disagree with? And Gail, you responded to that. Just to share with everyone on the conflict with Lee Hecht, et cetera, they've sent representatives to our workshop, meaning career transition workshop, correct, Gail?
Right. When Rex and I first started teaching, we did find that there was a lot of disagreement, and people would bring that up, and we've actually had, I think, all of the big players attend our workshop, and we would discuss where we were disagreeing and why. We actually have Gail Bridgman, who's, you know, from one of these career transition places, who's amazing, and she actually teaches a lot of our positions. So I feel like the disagreements we had 20 years ago, it's a much smaller area. You know, yeah. There may be a few things here and there, maybe how a resume is written, what you say, what you don't say, but it's nothing. I don't think it's anything like it used to be.
Cover letter or no cover letter, those type of things, right?
Yeah, Rex, do you agree? Because I think you remember those early conversations.
I do, and I think that because we have great people like Gail Bridgman and Locke Alderson, who are part of those sorts of career job search groups. Yeah, the thing that the differentiators, I'm not going to run down any sort of company in terms of disagreement, but I really like those job consultants or job search career consultants that have a real empathy, that really can understand where you're at when it comes down to, and guys, there's a lot of pain. There's a lot of rejection that comes down to this. And being able to understand how you can be helped on the emotional side, the family side, not only the career side. Again, I want to point to Locke Alderson and Gail Bridgman as being the two very best individuals that not only know how to help you find the job, but help you navigate this very tough time in your journey.
And the one thing I think that's always differentiated our workshop from other workshops is that we try to make sure that we're utilizing the latest recruiting techniques, whatever it is. So as recruiters are learning new things, like Snapchat, for instance, that's new. There's not a lot of companies out there utilizing Snapchat. So we brought that to the workshop as soon as we found examples. We brought Twitter to one of the workshops, and people were just enraged. They were like, we don't want to use Twitter. Why are you making us use Twitter? We're not making you guys do anything. We're just trying to show you guys some of the new advances, new ways to be found, new ways to connect. That's always been our goal, is to make sure anybody who attends, anybody who's listening is hearing some of the latest, the greatest, the changes, in the way that we recruit. And that's what's important. But at the end of the day, you've got to do whatever feels right for you. I might suggest something on your resume and you don't like it, you don't have to take it. You've got to do what feels right for you, but then look at the data. Is your resume getting hits? If I recommend something to you on your resume and you're not getting hits, find somebody who has a better recommendation, because I want you to get hits. We want you to find a job, and we want you to land quickly.
We laugh over the years, guys. We have been at this for well more than 15 years, and we've had a great laugh with telling everybody that after Gail's presentation, do not feel as though if you don't use all of these things that Gail is telling us about, that you won't get a job. Please don't think that she is saying that. There have been people that have thrown Gail into boxes of confusion that she did not ask to be in. She is simply telling us what works. Gail has led all of us recruiters for years. We have run behind Gail Houston, and we are pleased and blessed to still have Gail with us. So she's not bitter, and she's not, we've laughed about that for years, but she's not saying if you guys don't use everything she's talking about, you won't get a job.
No, she's very pragmatic, and she's worked with a lot of these things herself, and she's speaking from experience, not theoretically. So that's what's so great about having her give this presentation. Well,
everything I showed you, we've personally used to find candidates.
Right.
Yes.
Every single technique I just showed you. But we still use LinkedIn most of the time.
But that may change over time.
It will. I mean, there will be something that eventually replaces LinkedIn, and when that comes up, it'll be in our deck, and we will teach it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, that about sums it up. It's late in the afternoon. Our population is slowly shrinking because people have things to take care of. I want to thank Jeff and Foster and Rex and Gail. I want to thank Gail Bridgman for being on the call, and we will gather and analyze how well we did and criticize ourselves to death to see how we can make it better. We will have a post-mortem meeting on this, since this was our first broadcast. Gail, thank you for being the guinea pig on our first section.
First out the gate.
Now, I do want to say that we do have one more thing to share with you, and that is that our next presentation will be by Jeff Morris, and I'm going to bring that slide up. On May 19th at 3 p.m. Is that right? No, that is not right. That'll be May 26th.
Right.
Is that Is that correct, Jeff?
Yes, May
I
26th.
think that's May 26th.
May 26th at the same time, same bat station. Jeff is going to be talking about networking and building relationships. So if you've only signed up for this session, please go back to where you signed up and register for the next one. You'll get an acknowledgement email that'll give you the link and a password to take you in on May 26th for Jeff's presentation. And I want to thank you all for your time. God bless you, and may you land speedily.